What if I revealed that the most dreaded monster of our nightmares, cloaked in ancient tales and whispered fears across centuries, isn't mere folklore but the product of a real, mutating plague? What if those pale, sharp-toothed predators of our darkest dreams don't burst into flames under sunlight or morph into winged creatures, but instead move among us, feeding quietly, systematically, and scientifically on human blood to endure? What if vampirism isn't a supernatural curse, but a biological disease? And what if you've already encountered someone infected without ever suspecting it? Welcome to Chronicles of Myth, where age-old legends, buried terrors, and otherworldly conflicts come alive. If you're captivated by the hidden truths of mythology, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon below to stay updated with every epic tale. Awakening. Across every corner of the globe, through every epoch, humanity has spun stories of beasts, entities that skulk just beyond the glow of the campfire. The Strigoi of Romania, the Manananggal of the Philippines, the Jiangshi of China, these legends share one chilling constant: an insatiable craving for human blood. But where did this fixation originate? Scholars often point to ancient Mesopotamia, where the fearsome Lilitu, a demonic entity, was said to prey on infants and seduce men in their sleep. Ring, 1973. Yet, despite varied names and rituals, there's an eerie consistency to these accounts, too unsettling to dismiss. Forget the suave nobility of modern films. The original vampire wasn't charismatic, it was a hunter, cold, cunning, and driven by primal urge. No refuge exists in crowds when a predator knows no fear of its quarry, wrote folklorist Montague Summers in The Vampire in Europe, 1929. For centuries, people didn't merely believe in vampires, they dreaded them. Graves were unearthed, bodies pierced and beheaded, villages conducted midnight ceremonies, incinerated hearts, or shackled corpses in iron. These weren't mere rituals, they were desperate measures against a tangible threat. I once scoffed at these stories, brushing them off as grim fables or moral allegories. That changed one fateful night years ago. A close friend, vibrant, rational, a woman of reason, was found lifeless in her bed, 2 tiny punctures on her throat. Her blood was nearly gone. No evidence of a break-in, no signs of a struggle, just an eerie stillness, followed by absence. The kind that haunts. That night broke my skepticism. What started as curiosity grew into a personal crusade, a tireless hunt for a truth most refused to acknowledge. My peers called it madness, but madness is just clarity when you're chasing the unthinkable. My quest led me not to myth, but to science. I'm now certain that vampires are not creatures of sorcery, but of mutation, a virus, which my team has named HV, the Human Vampiric Virus, capable of transforming an ordinary person into something monstrous, something ruthlessly efficient. HV isn't spread through occult rites or demonic bargains, it's a pathogen, a monga virus akin to rabies or measles. Unlike its viral kin, however, HV doesn't target a single organ or tissue, it invades every cell in the body, sparing only the red blood cells. This unique tactic keeps the host alive, at least in a functional sense, while their biology is rewritten from within. Cellular regeneration speeds up, the immune system is suppressed, organs shut down or adapt, and within mere hours, the host begins to transform. Early symptoms mimic the mundane: fever, shivers, migraines. But this phase passes swiftly, giving way to something far darker, the vampiric coma. Victims fall unconscious, not calmly, they writhe, sweat heavily, and gasp in shallow, jagged breaths. Most don't survive, the elderly and young almost always perish. Only those aged 18 to 50 have a chance to awaken. And when they do, they are no longer human. What rises from this coma is a being fundamentally changed, not just in behavior but in physiology. Cells regenerate faster, muscles grow denser, bones stretch and reform, the iris widens, resembling a nocturnal predator's. The skin pales as blood is drawn from its outer layers, creating that ghostly hue. These aren't poetic flourishes, they are observable, verifiable medical realities. In one autopsy, I discovered signs of horizontal gene transfer, much like how bacteria exchange DNA to gain new abilities. One subject, whose identity remains confidential, could memorize complex visual patterns at speeds previously thought impossible. When shown rapidly changing images, he recalled the sequence flawlessly after a single glance. Another, in near-total darkness, could discern facial expressions from 6 meters away. Their brains process light uniquely, they see what we cannot. As neuroscientist David Eagleman noted, our brains are built not for truth, but for survival, incognito, 2011. Vampires, however, are built to dominate. Still skeptical? Consider this: in a recent experiment, exposure to specific light angles, particularly sharp 90 degrees intersections, triggered severe neurological reactions in infected subjects, seizures, visions, complete system failure. This phenomenon, dubbed the Crucifix Glitch, may explain the myth that vampires fear crosses. But it's not religion they dread, it's geometry. It would be simpler, even reassuring, to dismiss this as paranoia or fantasy. But truth doesn't bend to comfort. It waits in the shadows, just beyond the flicker of your sight, patient and unrelenting. Virus. The transformation doesn't stem from sorcery, it begins with a virus, silent, precise, and terrifyingly cunning. Unlike pathogens that attack specific systems, the Human Vampiric Virus, HV, is a master of total takeover. Transmitted through bodily fluids, typically blood or saliva, the virus acts swiftly. It enters cells via endocytosis, merging with their membranes rather than destroying them, evading immune detection for critical hours as it spreads rapidly. Curiously, it spares red blood cells, a mystery that still puzzles researchers. This allows the host to maintain basic oxygenation while other systems undergo a horrific overhaul. The virus doesn't just invade, it manipulates, reprogramming the body's very blueprint. Unlike typical viral infections, HV doesn't destroy with brute force, it rewrites the rules with surgical precision. The thyroid gland is one of its first targets. Within hours, metabolic processes accelerate beyond anything seen in modern medicine. Victims begin to experience symptoms: high fever, migraines, tremors, excessive thirst, and extreme sweating. The body seems caught in a state of internal combustion. Cells are driven into overproduction, tissues begin to break and rebuild, and nutrient reserves are consumed at breakneck speed. The host urinates frequently in an attempt to purge the rising toxicity. Despite the severity, these symptoms are deceptively mundane, resembling the flu or heat stroke. Many who experience them will not live long enough to notice the truth. Yet those who survive past this fevered stage enter the vampiric coma, a period of complete bodily surrender where biology itself is rewritten in absolute silence. This coma, though it appears as death to an outside observer, is a state of unprecedented cellular activity. Muscles tear and reform, bones elongate subtly, and neural structures reorganize. Breathing slows until it becomes nearly undetectable. In this state, the victim lies suspended between two realities, human and something else entirely. The process is brutal, many do not wake. Autopsies of non-survivors reveal massive internal trauma, fractured bones, burst capillaries, extreme cortical pressure. Yet the body shows signs of rapid regeneration, even in death. The virus is attempting a resurrection, and when it fails, the result is often a corpse left disfigured and bloated with unspent energy. But for those few who emerge, the transformation is irreversible. They are no longer the person they were, in mind or in flesh. Something else looks out through their eyes, something ancient and newly born. The structural changes inflicted by HV are profound. One of the most astonishing effects is the alteration in the muscular system. Human muscle tissue contains a balance of fast-twitch and slow-twitch fibers, designed for a mix of endurance and quick bursts. In the infected, nearly all muscle tissue becomes fast-twitch dominant. This provides not only incredible speed, but explosive strength and stamina previously impossible for human anatomy. The mitochondria within these cells multiply aggressively, enabling long periods of activity without lactic acid buildup. Even more alarming is the atrophy of the heart. It does not strengthen like the rest of the body, it stops. Instead, blood is circulated through the contraction of skeletal muscle, similar to how peristalsis moves food through the intestines. The heart, once a symbol of vitality, becomes obsolete. This circulatory reversal grants the infected a mechanical endurance unbounded by the limits of human physiology. Externally, the infection manifests first through the skin. About 3 days after awakening, peripheral blood flow begins to shut down. Capillaries in the epidermis shrink and vanish, drawing blood inward to preserve core function. The skin pales dramatically, becoming almost translucent in places. Thinner areas, such as the lips and eyelids, are affected first, followed by the extremities. Many infected will instinctively cover themselves, hoods, gloves, heavy fabrics, not only to shield from sunlight, but to mask the visible signs of transformation. Makeup and artificial tanning are frequently used to simulate normal pigmentation, though these efforts are rarely convincing under close observation. Despite the lifeless pallor, the skin is not cold. Rather, it feels slightly damp and elastic, a result of increased interstitial fluid and sweat secretion from overstimulated glands. This lends the infected a disturbingly clammy touch. One of the most disturbing modifications, however, lies in the teeth. During the latter half of the coma, the upper and lower canines undergo rapid and painful growth. Specialized ameloblasts, enamel-producing cells, are directed through the dental pulp into the crown of the tooth, where they deposit enamel in pointed formations. As a result, the canines elongate and sharpen into functional weapons. The surrounding gums recede due to dehydration and tissue loss, making the fangs appear even longer. These are not decorative, they are surgical tools, evolved for precision incisions over major blood vessels. Upon piercing the skin, the vampire's saliva introduces two critical proteins, draculin, an anticoagulant also found in vampire bats, and a mild anesthetic. This combination ensures uninterrupted feeding while numbing the victim into passive submission. The incision is clean, the suffering is delayed. Blood consumption in this context is not symbolic, it is vital. The virus has stripped the host of its ability to produce PCDH19, a protein linked to hominid neural development. This protein exists only in human blood, making human prey not a preference, but a biological necessity. Without it, neurological degradation begins, hallucinations, seizures, and eventual total collapse follow. The digestive system, in turn, has adapted to this singular diet. The stomach shrinks, intestines are shortened, and the gut flora becomes dominated by organisms capable of processing blood's iron-rich, nitrogen-heavy composition. This prevents poisoning and allows efficient extraction of nutrients. Despite these changes, vampires cannot consume massive amounts at once. The average capacity is around 1.5 liters, requiring them to feed slowly, often over hours, while intermittently excreting the waste as potent, ammonia-rich urine. The scent, sharp and unmistakable, is one of the few traits that remain impossible to conceal. These changes raise an existential question: if all infected feed on humans, why haven't they eradicated us? The answer lies in the virus's own limitations. A significant portion of the human population is immune to HIV. These individuals generate antibodies too quickly for the virus to take hold, often resisting infection before symptoms ever appear. This hidden barrier protects the species from collapse. Moreover, the infected have developed a countermeasure, hibernation, triggered by elevated levels of leukocynin, a peptide associated with hibernating animals. Vampires can enter a state of suspended animation. In this state, all biological activity slows to near stasis. A vampire can sleep for years, even centuries, awakening only when prey is abundant. This cycle ensures both predator and prey persist. It is not mercy, it is mathematics. And the numbers are working in their favor. Monster. Within the newly reconfigured skull of the infected lies a machine no longer governed by the fragile limitations of the human brain. The changes introduced by the Human Vampiric Virus, HV, to the central nervous system are among the most disturbing and revolutionary aspects of the condition. Once the body has stabilized and the acute phase of transformation is complete, the virus shifts its focus to neural optimization. These alterations are not random, they are terrifyingly precise. Evolutionary scalpel strokes intended to mold a more efficient predator. The human brain is a marvel of complexity, but in vampires, it is transformed into something far more advanced and far less empathetic. Patterns of thought, perception, and motivation are rewritten to serve the singular directive of survival through consumption. Infected individuals emerge with not only heightened senses and instincts, but with fundamentally altered cognition and behavior that no longer align with the social or moral frameworks of their former selves. The most visible change to the vampire brain occurs in the amygdala, which undergoes hypertrophy, growing significantly larger than that of an average human. This region, responsible for emotional processing and fear responses, becomes dominant in the neural hierarchy. In vampires, fear is no longer a warning system, but a targeting mechanism. The increased size of the amygdala amplifies aggression and reward-seeking behavior, especially in response to successful feeding. Simultaneously, the anterior cingulate gyrus, a structure associated with empathy and impulse control, shows a marked reduction in neural connectivity to the rest of the brain. This functional isolation deadens moral reasoning and emotional bonding. The vampire becomes indifferent to suffering, not out of cruelty, but because the neural architecture that supports compassion has been severed. In this sense, their predation is mechanical, instinctive, devoid of malice or mercy. The visual cortex is another site of radical enhancement. While in humans it occupies a modest portion of the occipital lobe, in vampires, it expands dramatically, supported by increased cortical folding and dense interneuron networks. This expansion results in superior spatial awareness, motion detection, and pattern recognition. Most notably, vampires exhibit quadrichromatic vision, possessing a fourth type of cone cell in their retina, which is sensitive to near-infrared wavelengths. This allows them to detect subtle variations in heat signatures, track movement in total darkness, and perceive light spectrums invisible to the human eye. Their irises are hyperdilated and shimmer in low light, much like animals equipped with tapetum lucidum, reflecting even faint light to enhance night vision. This visual supremacy comes at a price: extreme sensitivity to bright light. Vampires are not harmed by sunlight in the way myths suggest, but exposure to it causes severe pain, disorientation, and temporary blindness, making them most dangerous under the cover of night. Even more unsettling is the enlargement of the corpus callosum, the bundle of nerve fibers connecting the two hemispheres of the brain. In vampires, it is nearly twice as large as in humans, allowing for seamless and near-instantaneous communication between analytical and creative centers. This enhancement enables them to process complex stimuli with incredible speed, calculate variables in dynamic environments, and predict behavioral outcomes. In simple terms, they think faster than we can act. The result is a creature that is not only physically superior, but mentally anticipatory, capable of plotting moves in advance with uncanny precision. Observational tests have confirmed their ability to memorize and replicate patterns, solve spatial logic problems in seconds, and learn languages at accelerated rates. The vampire is not merely an apex predator, it is a polymath wrapped in flesh, with instincts as sharp as its intellect. But what separates the vampire most from its human origin is not just speed or strength. It is the reconfiguration of its reward system. The dopaminergic pathways, responsible for pleasure and satisfaction, are hijacked. Infected individuals derive intense euphoria from feeding, far beyond the normal pleasure responses of humans. This neurological hijacking results in a condition akin to addiction, reinforcing feeding behavior not only as a necessity, but as an obsession. Over time, vampires become psychologically tethered to the act of consumption. The act of drinking blood becomes an ecstatic event, one that their minds crave and seek out compulsively. This addictive cycle is both a strength and a weakness. It drives their cunning and determination, but also introduces predictable behavioral patterns that, when understood, may be used against them. Yet, even understanding this pathology does little to diminish the horror of facing a creature that kills, not from rage, but for pleasure. The auditory and olfactory systems also undergo significant changes. Enhanced cerebral neurons expand the range of detectable sound frequencies, granting vampires the ability to hear movements imperceptible to human ears. They can detect the heartbeat of a living creature from several meters away, identify vocal tones that suggest emotional states, and even track prey by the sound of blood flow. Their olfactory bulb enlarges to process scent with similarly high fidelity, allowing for precise tracking of individuals by unique chemical signatures. Attempts to mask one's presence through scent or sound are almost entirely futile. The vampire is built to hunt, not only in the dark, but through layers of walls, through forests, and through time. Once a target is identified, there is no distance too great, no obstacle too thick. A predator this efficient does not chase blindly, it calculates, stalks, and executes. Despite these transformations, not every infected individual becomes a perfect killer. There exists a period of neurological acclimation following the transformation, typically lasting several days to weeks. During this time, subjects exhibit erratic behavior, confusion, disorientation, even self-harming tendencies. This state is marked by an overwhelming sensory flood as the enhanced brain struggles to regulate its new input volume. Some do not survive this phase, others emerge with scarred minds, developing obsessive-compulsive behaviors as a means of coping. This is where many of the old myths likely originated: the compulsive counting, the obsessive organizing of objects, or the fear of mirrors, possibly a side effect of hyperactive self-recognition circuits overwhelmed by visual stimuli. While these traits do not apply to all vampires, they are common enough to have entered folklore. These remnants of human neurobiology remain as faint echoes, ghosts of former selves clinging to routines that once gave their lives meaning. Perhaps the most chilling realization is not what the virus adds, but what it takes away. There is no mourning in the transformed, no memory of love, no regret, no attachment. If remnants of human memory remain, they are detached, clinical, reduced to data points. A vampire might remember a sibling, a friend, even a child, but not the warmth of their presence. The emotional connections are gone, stripped away to make room for utility. The virus's goal is clear: remove all that hinders survival. This makes the infected not only dangerous, but alien. They do not think like us. They do not feel like us. And though they may wear our faces, speak our languages, and mimic our behaviors, they are no longer human. Weapon. When we speak of predation, the mind often turns to claws, fangs, brute force, and savagery. But in the case of the vampire, biology has forged something far more refined. Their weaponry is not crude, it is precise, calculated, and devastating. Every element of their physical form serves a function, honed for stealth, speed, and lethality. The transformation induced by the human vampiric virus does not simply turn a human into a monster. It redesigns the host from the cellular level up into a predator without rival. They do not need tools, they are the tool. Their flesh, once fragile and vulnerable, becomes an arsenal hidden beneath the illusion of humanoid symmetry. The vampire is not just dangerous because it is strong or fast, it is dangerous because it is perfect, designed not by nature, but by a viral hand unconstrained by evolutionary time. One of the most striking adaptations lies in the structure of their musculature. Human muscle fibers are typically balanced between slow-twitch and fast-twitch varieties. This balance allows for a compromise between endurance and explosive movement. In vampires, this balance is annihilated. Fast-twitch fibers dominate their musculature, nearly eliminating slow-twitch entirely. This adaptation, combined with elevated myoglobin content and a vastly increased number of mitochondria per muscle cell, results in a body capable of sudden, sustained bursts of movement and force. Lactic acid buildup is negligible, they do not tire as we do. They sprint for hours, they lift beyond human limitations, and they strike with a velocity that renders most reactions moot. A blow from a vampire is not a test of strength, it is execution, cold, immediate, and final. These enhancements extend beyond force. Their reflexes are magnitudes faster than any uninfected human. The secret lies in the myelination of their motor neurons. Axonal diameters are nearly doubled, and synaptic response times are accelerated through a combination of enhanced neurotransmitter production and optimized signal pathways. In practical terms, this means vampires react before their opponents can complete a movement. They do not dodge, they predict. They do not parry, they neutralize. The infected nervous system becomes a real-time threat assessment engine, filtering sensory data, predicting trajectories, and triggering muscular responses at a speed no conscious mind can match. This neural upgrade turns even an untrained vampire into a formidable combatant, and those with tactical knowledge become unstoppable. One must also consider the structural integrity of their skeletal system. While bones appear normal in density and shape, microscopic analysis reveals denser mineral composition and a matrix reinforced by hyperactive osteoblasts. This creates a skeletal frame that resists fractures under stresses that would shatter human bones. Yet, the increased density does not compromise agility. Joints are reconstructed to allow for a greater range of motion, and ligament elasticity is increased significantly, granting unnatural flexibility. Their gait is deceptively human until they strike. Then it becomes evident, their limbs bend with unnatural ease, their posture shifts mid-motion, and their center of gravity adjusts instinctively to maintain balance. They move like water wearing a human shape, flowing into every opening, every weakness, with surgical precision. The transformation of their skin is less apparent at first glance, but no less important. Upon completion of the vampiric coma, blood is rapidly withdrawn from the dermal capillaries and redirected to vital organs. The result is a pale, almost luminous skin tone, but the changes are not merely aesthetic. The epidermis thickens, becoming more resistant to laceration. Collagen density increases, lending an almost rubber-like resilience to the flesh. More impressively, the skin develops a minor degree of kinetic resistance. Minor impacts and abrasions that would tear human flesh instead glance off or bruise the surface. This, combined with rapid clotting and cellular regeneration, makes superficial injury irrelevant. Vampires do not bleed freely, and when they do, it is often in controlled, minimal quantities. The body closes wounds faster than the human eye can track. Pain responses are dampened, they do not scream, they retaliate. Another essential weapon lies within the mouth, beyond the visible fangs. While the canines are elongated and sharpened for incisions, the real marvel is the synergy between their teeth, tongue, and salivary glands. Vampires feed with a remarkable degree of efficiency. Their canines puncture major vessels, and a specialized groove along the tongue serves as a siphon, drawing blood with rhythmic muscular contractions. But this process would be impossible without the biochemical agents in their saliva. Draculin, a glycoprotein anticoagulant first identified in vampire bats, prevents clotting at the wound site. Meanwhile, a second compound acts as a mild anesthetic, dulling the pain and preventing the victim from waking. The combination of stealth and efficiency makes the vampire's feeding method near undetectable. Many victims die in their sleep, unaware that they are being drained by something older and infinitely more cunning than themselves. Beyond feeding, the internal restructuring of the digestive system further enhances their lethality. The stomach is reduced to a compact, hyperacidic organ designed to break down blood and little else. The small intestine is shorter, but far more efficient, with a microbiome custom-built by the virus to extract iron, nitrogen, and specific proteins necessary for sustaining neural function. Waste is processed quickly and expelled frequently, with urine that emits an acrid, ammonia-heavy stench. This odor is one of the few physical giveaways for identifying infected individuals. The rest of the system, from pancreas to liver, is either minimized or restructured for efficiency. The digestive tract becomes not a system for variety, but a mechanism for singular survival. Blood in, waste out, nothing else matters. Lastly, we come to the vampire's respiratory and circulatory adjustments. With the heart rendered obsolete, circulation is maintained through a peristaltic system driven by skeletal muscles. This allows for silent operation, no heartbeat, no audible pulse. The lungs, meanwhile, function as pressure regulators more than oxygen exchanges, since most tissue is capable of anaerobic operation. Oxygen becomes secondary, the need to breathe diminishes, allowing the infected to remain submerged, buried, or confined in airtight spaces for extended periods without consequence. The lack of breath also removes a common human vulnerability, panic. Where we would gasp and tremble, they remain still, waiting, watching, calculating. The predator does not fear the dark, it breathes in silence and strikes in stillness. The vampire is not a fantasy, it is an engineered outcome, shaped by a virus with no conscience and no goal beyond propagation. Each adaptation is a line in a blueprint of survival. They are not cursed by the supernatural, they are perfected by biology. They are weapons of flesh and silence, and their arsenal is far from depleted. Awakening. Despite their terrifying physical capabilities and profound neurological alterations, vampires are not immune to the constraints of biology. At their core, they are hosts, carriers of a virus that has not only reshaped their form, but has also rewritten their relationship with the ecosystem. HV is not merely an affliction, it is an agent of symbiosis. It demands from its host a strict obedience to survival parameters and punishes deviation with systemic collapse. The virus does not tolerate weakness, but in exchange for compliance, it offers a kind of immortality. To understand the true nature of this coexistence, one must examine not only what the virus transforms, but what it chooses to preserve, enhance, and rely upon. The vampire is not a solitary creature, it is the byproduct of an alliance, forced and irreversible, between a human host and a microbial invader that has refined survival to a science. The digestive system, now optimized for blood and nothing else, also harbors a key to this mutual dependence. The altered microbiome in ordinary humans' gut flora assists with breaking down complex carbohydrates, vitamins, and fibers. In vampires, this role is radically redefined. The microbiome becomes an organ in its own right, hosting a complex colony of genetically altered bacteria that support immune functions and assist in the digestion of hemoglobin, iron, and nitrogenous waste. These bacterial populations are not accidental, they are curated by HV to eliminate anything unnecessary and reinforce only what is essential for processing blood. Over time, measured not in days but in years, the vampire's gut transitions into a sealed, efficient laboratory, rejecting external food sources and adapting to extreme nutrient concentrations. Attempts to consume other materials result in violent rejection, vomiting, pain, and systemic destabilization follow. Blood is not just food, it is the only viable sustenance, a singular fuel for a singular purpose. This exclusive dependency also presents unique challenges, especially regarding the sourcing of human blood. The virus, paradoxically, protects its food source by limiting its own transmissibility. HV cannot infect all humans. A notable portion of the population appears to carry a natural immunity, likely due to a class of antibodies produced in the early hours of exposure. These antibodies do not resemble adaptive immune responses, which can take days to mobilize. Instead, they appear to be part of the innate immune system, encoded from birth, perhaps by microbial interactions in early childhood or even inherited genetic resistance. This immunity is silent, unnoticed by the carriers themselves. It manifests only when exposure to HV occurs, neutralizing the virus before cellular penetration is complete. Infected vampires quickly learn to identify immune individuals, not by instinct, but through failed transformations, bites that lead nowhere, prey that survives. In some regions, legends grew around these people, calling them blessed or marked. Science calls them resistant hosts. For vampires, the existence of such hosts is both a safeguard and a limitation. They prevent the total collapse of the prey population, they enforce scarcity. And in doing so, they impose a rhythm: predation, withdrawal, hibernation. Leukokainin, the peptide responsible for inducing a hibernation state in certain animals, is elevated in vampires as part of a built-in failsafe. When prey becomes scarce or competition becomes unsustainable, HV triggers a dormant state. All biological activity slows to a near halt. Brain activity becomes undetectable, tissue degradation pauses, and cellular respiration is reduced to a trickle. In this state, a vampire can endure for decades without feeding, awakening only when environmental cues, such as pheromone concentrations or temperature changes, indicate the presence of viable prey. The world may change, buildings may collapse, empires may fall, but the sleeper remains, waiting. This hibernation is not an escape, it is a mechanism of balance. A predator cannot survive if it consumes all there is. Yet another layer to this equilibrium: the virus's effect on cellular aging. In normal humans, aging is a function of telomere shortening, oxidative stress, and accumulated cellular damage. HV halts all three. Telomerase, the enzyme responsible for maintaining chromosome caps, is upregulated to such a degree that cellular division no longer results in deterioration. At the same time, catalase and other antioxidant enzymes are produced at levels that prevent DNA degradation from radiation and free radicals. Cells that should age and die instead remain in a suspended state of regeneration. Tissues repair themselves at rates that defy medical precedent, organs do not fail, skin does not wrinkle. The passage of time becomes irrelevant. Yet, immortality in this case is not perfection, it is maintenance, constant, enforced, and dependent on the virus. Remove the blood, deny the fuel, and the system collapses. Immortality comes with hunger, always hunger. Perhaps the most overlooked aspect of this symbiosis is its impact on behavior and long-term cognition. Over centuries, memories dull, not because they fade, but because they are overwritten by survival routines. A vampire that hibernates for a generation awakens with fragments of identity, yet sharpened predatory instincts. Names, places, emotions, all lose clarity. What remains is the method: how to hunt, how to hide, how to adapt. It is not memory loss in the traditional sense, it is a strategic forgetting. The virus appears to favor cognitive functions that support evasion and predation, while letting go of those that no longer serve a purpose. Language, logic, pattern recognition, preserved. Affection, nostalgia, guilt, discarded. Over time, the host becomes something less than human, not just in body, but in soul. There is no psychological regression, there is only pruning. The infected mind is shaped to be lean, functional, and devoid of sentiment. And yet, even within this grim symbiosis, remnants of humanity persist: stray behaviors, compulsions, dreams. Some vampires, particularly those in their early years of infection, report vivid hallucinations, voices calling from the past, memories that replay like broken film reels. Whether these are neurological echoes or psychological fractures is unknown. What is certain is that the virus does not cleanse its host cleanly. Traces remain. Sometimes, they manifest as obsessive rituals, the compulsive arrangement of objects, repetitive counting, or the hoarding of relics from past lives. These behaviors serve no obvious survival function, but they recur with unsettling frequency. Perhaps they are remnants of the mind resisting erasure, or perhaps, as some have speculated, they are the virus's way of maintaining a psychic equilibrium, allowing just enough humanity to remain to make the predator functional in a human world. Shadows. Throughout history, architecture has stood as a monument to human achievement. Temples, cathedrals, castles, and cities built to celebrate civilization's defiance of nature. But hidden in the angles and materials of these constructions lies something far older than culture. There is evidence, subtle and persistent, that human architectural design evolved not only for shelter or spiritual symbolism, but as a method of defense against something very real. Structures once thought to be purely symbolic in their use of form may have been tools of survival. And at the center of this defensive language is geometry itself. It may seem absurd to suggest that right angles, of all things, could serve as protection against a predator. But as ancient records, modern neurological studies, and behavioral data from infected individuals increasingly suggest, the geometry of human design has long been humanity's last silent weapon. The phenomenon is neurological in nature. Vampires, while superior in sensory processing and neural efficiency, suffer from a specific form of perceptual vulnerability. Within the visual cortex of the infected brain, receptors responsible for recognizing vertical and horizontal lines are cross-linked in a way that is not seen in ordinary human anatomy. This miswiring creates a dangerous condition when presented with stimuli in which right angles intersect over a broad visual field. Their brain responds with a feedback loop of neuroelectrical overload. This results in severe cognitive dissonance, hallucinations, nausea, and, in more extreme cases, violent seizures. The effect is dependent on both light and focus, meaning that right angles must occupy the direct forward field of vision and be well illuminated to trigger the reaction. Though rare in nature, right angles abound in human environments, architecture, furniture, symbols, and tools. This neural glitch, referred to as the crucifix effect, may explain more than just aversion to religious symbols. It suggests an evolved defense system, one humanity did not even know it was designing. Religious iconography, particularly that of Christian origin, seems to have crystallized this vulnerability into myth. The cross, present in churches, tombs, and protective amulets, became not just a symbol of faith, but a weaponized shape. It is unlikely that early religious societies understood the neurological mechanism behind it. More likely, they observed a consistent pattern. The creatures avoided places marked by intersecting beams, by cruciform architecture, by symmetrical designs lit with oil lamps and candles. Over time, the spiritual significance of these designs took precedence, and the truth became lost. But the effect remained. Vampires cannot tolerate environments saturated with intersecting right angles under direct light. They recoil, not from the divine, but from the very structure of man-made space. Geometry became salvation. It is possible that entire civilizations unknowingly aligned their architecture, not only for aesthetic harmony, but for survival. Interestingly, this neurological sensitivity is not absolute. Observations of infected individuals in modern environments show varying degrees of tolerance. Many have learned to adapt, they avert their gaze, avoid direct confrontation with structured environments, and develop coping mechanisms. Selective focus, consciously or unconsciously, allows them to blur out geometric stresses, unless they are forced into direct confrontation. But the glitch never disappears, it is an architectural thorn embedded in their minds. In darkness, they flourish. In the ordered light of civilization, they suffer. This duality may explain the waxing and waning of vampiric outbreaks throughout history. During times of architectural simplicity, tents, caves, organic settlements, they thrived.